anything remotely close to this is how you nurture your friendships. This is how you work on your friendships. What I saw was this is how you get his attention. This is how you get him to call you back. We saw so much about romantic relationships, and it has been so ingrained in us that that is the most important relationship that we're ever going to have in life that we have no idea how to exist in a friendship. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Felicia and this is The Feminine Fancy. We talk about so much on this channel. Sometimes we are lighthearted and talking about wedding stuff, and sometimes we get deep. And today we are going to be going a little deep and talking about what I am calling the myth of female friendship. The other day I was in therapy. I was explaining to my therapist how I was feeling really nervous about something. I was feeling really anxious about something and really scared. And she asked me like, okay, well, you know, who's in your community? Like, who can you sort of turn to for support in these times? Like, you know, basically asking me like, who are my friends? And I kind of had this realization of like, I don't know. I don't have a whole bunch of people around me. And I was like, let's just say my therapist's name is Melissa. I was like, Melissa, I haven't even been asked out to like get a cup of coffee with someone, like with a friend, in I don't know how long. Like, it's been a long time. And that kind of made me realize like there really is this expectation of what female friendship is going to look like, and it rarely looks like what we think it's going to look like. So that was kind of what sparked my wanting to talk about this today. I made a video about friendships that I put over on Patreon, which kind of gives a little bit of backstory about my own experiences with friendships, with female friendships particularly. And so if you're interested in that, I will leave the link down below. That's over on Patreon, like I said. But in today's video, I really want to talk about the ways in which I think society really set us up for failure when it comes to our friendships, and why a lot of our friendships are not lasting, and what we can do to sort of remedy the situation. And of course, I don't have the answers, but I do think that there are some things that we can take accountability for, and we can sort of look at our friendships and ask ourselves, you know, certain questions around them. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. If you would, please go ahead and give this video a like right off the bat if you like this topic, just because I like to try and get to at least 1,000 likes on every video. That really helps me out in the algorithm. So click that thumbs up button. And if you are new here and you're not subscribed, also consider hitting the red subscribe button. Okay, so like I said, I've wanted to talk about this for a while. I talked about it on Patreon, but today I want to discuss like how the media really messed us up in this way. And when you think about it, if you're like me and you're a millennial and you think back to like Disney Channel era, right? What did we see? We saw a lot of images of girls being best friends. We saw groups of best friends, or we saw a pair of best friends. Every TV show that we saw, every movie that we saw showcased friendship in this very specific way. On That's So Raven, you had Raven and Chelsea. On Hannah Montana, you had Hannah and Lily. On Wizards of Waverly Place, you had Alex and Harper. Like every single show that we watched growing up showcased a best friend relationship. If it wasn't a best friend relationship, then we saw groups, right? So there was like the clique. If you don't know what the clique is, and you were also very girly and you like enjoyed girly things growing up, look into the clique. There was also Mean Girls. It was three girls that were friends. They were kind of frenemies, but whatever. We had Sex and the City, a group of friends. We had Girlfriends, a group of friends. Like every show that we saw showcased friendship in this very specific and intentional way. I think that what that did was it gave us this expectation that we would either have like a group of best girlfriends, or we would have one best friend who we were their best friend and they were our best friend. And so we had this expectation that this is what friendship was going to look like in adulthood. For many of us, that's just not what friendship looks like in adulthood. And what it's doing is it's creating this feeling of, you know, not feeling good enough, not feeling like we can sustain friendships because we're trying to imitate these images that we saw growing up. My mom used to always say to us growing up, you will be lucky if you can count your friends on one hand. And I used to be like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, of course I'm gonna have a bunch of friends. Like, I might not have that many friends now, but when I get older, I'm gonna have friends. She would always say, one hand if you're lucky. So in the media, all we've seen are these friend relationships where people are constantly hanging out and people are each other's best friend, ride or die. And that, like I said, for many of us is just not the reality. The reality is that friendship, especially as an adult, looks very, very different than that. It looks, and this is in my life, friendship in my life, and I'm sure in many of your lives, looks a little something like this. Looks more like this. It looks like not talking to some of your friends for months on end and then having one like 2-hour phone call and then not talking to them again for another 3 to 6 months and having another 2-hour phone call where you get to catch up on things. Or it's calling each other after work and chatting briefly on your drive home from work where you're just quickly able to catch up. The idea that our friends will constantly and always be available to us as if they don't have their own individual lives is not realistic, and it's a problem. The reality of the situation is that we are all just doing our best and living life. When you have friendships, like yes, you need to put in the effort, and that person also needs to put in the effort, but the fact of the matter is that we're all working, existing, dealing with family drama, dealing with relationship, things, issues, or just relationships in general with our husbands, our boyfriends, whatever. Like, we're balancing so much. And I think what's happening is because our society just doesn't really put the same amount of emphasis on friendships as it does romantic relationships, we think that we don't need to work hard at our friendships anymore. Growing up, I don't think I ever saw any articles or anything about how to maintain a friendship. I saw in 17 and in Cosmo and in all of these other magazines that I actually wasn't allowed to read until I turned 17. In those magazines, I never saw anything remotely close to, this is how you nurture your friendships. This is how you work on your friendships. What I saw was, this is how you get his attention. This is how you get him to call you back. We saw so much about romantic relationships, and it has been so ingrained in us that that is the most important relationship that we're ever going to have in life, that we have no idea how to exist in a friendship. So then when things hit the fan and you and your friend are arguing or are mad at each other for something, we have no idea how to deal with it and how to actually communicate effectively and work through problems in our friendships, because we don't see them as relationships. We see friendships as these things that we have to, entertain us, to have fun with our friends and do all these things, but we don't take them as seriously as we do our romantic relationships. When you have an issue in a romantic relationship, you go ahead and y'all go to therapy, or you go to your elders, or you figure it out, or you break up. When you have issues in your friendships, you don't go to therapy. Like, we don't think to do any of these things, and then we have these fractured relationships everywhere because we just don't know how to manage relationships with our friends. And that is because we have just been pitched for so long that the most important relationship that you will ever have in your entire life is your romantic relationship. And who cares if you maintain your friendships, because there will always be another friend you can make, but there won't always be another guy. We have been sold the idea that friendships don't take effort. We have been sold the idea that friendships are easy and that things can just be surface level, free and easy, and it doesn't take work, when the reality is friendships take just as much, if not more work than your romantic relationships. I actually just got off the phone with my best friend, and we were having a really insightful and beautiful conversation about friendships and about the way your friendships are exposed when you get engaged. I was her maid of honor, and we went through a friendship fracture during that time because there was just so much high intensity, lots of arguing, lots of misunderstanding each other. But the thing that got us from there, which was back in 2019, to here, and what strengthened our friendship, was the fact that we were both willing to sit down with each other and say exactly, this is what what you did that pissed me off, and this is how I feel about it, and you know, we're either going to work on this or we're going to go our separate ways. We got blatantly honest with each other, and that was how we were able to maintain and continue our friendship. And you know, she was saying to me, because I was telling her about a friendship that I have currently that I don't feel is very strong and that I don't feel is going to sustain for a very long time, unfortunately. And she was like, just make sure that you really process and mourn that friendship, because it is just as important as your romantic relationship, and it is a breakup when you are no longer friends with someone that you spent time with. This is someone that you went on trips with, you spent the night with, like had sleepovers with, and you went to dinner with, and you knew their family and they knew your family, and you know, there's just so much that you share with a friend or with a best friend, and when that relationship fractures, it's just as painful as when a romantic relationship ends. I listened to an amazing podcast, I think it was on NPR, and it was called Big Friendships, How We Keep Each Other Close. And it just followed the stories and the relationships of different women and their friendships. And one woman and her friend decided to go to therapy because they really wanted to make their friendship work and make their relationship work. And so they took that step to go to therapy. One woman called in crying her eyes out because she missed her friend. Like, the friendship had ended and she missed that relationship. And I can totally relate to that. Like, I've had quite a few friendships that have ended, and I've cried over them and I've missed them, and I've just been like, oh gosh, like the relationship that we had, the fun that we had, all of that is gone. And it is sad, but it is a part of life, just like relationships end. That is also a part of life. Not everyone is meant to be in your life forever, and people serve different purposes in your life at different times. When I was 21, 22 and going out and having a great time with the person I would have considered my best friend at that point. Now that I'm older, I'm 28 and I'm engaged, and you know, I'm focusing more on my home and building and creating my family with my soon-to-be husband. Like, that relationship that we had just hasn't really matured into or grown into being able to relate on this new level, right? Like, sometimes your friendships just kind of stay in the past. They stay where they were, and they just don't grow with you into a new phase of your life. That's okay. Like, it's sad. It's so sad. And it's so okay to be sad and to cry over a friendship. Like, my friendships, the ones that I hold really close, have been more influential to me than some of my romantic relationships, 100%. So it's okay to be sad about it and to cry and to mourn the end of a friendship. But I think it's also important to remember that, like, if you don't have a lot of friends, if you're like me and you've never had a whole bunch of friends, don't feel weird about that. Like, don't feel like you're not normal or like something's wrong with you or everyone else has all these friends. I think social media is making it look like people have a lot more people in their lives than they do. And I remember I was on Instagram just the other day, and it's this girl that I know from pageants, and she just had her bachelorette party, and she had so many girls there. And I was like, what? How do you know that many people? How do you have that many girlfriends that you invited like 10, 15 people to your bachelorette weekend? Like, Felicia could never. Cannot relate at all. And I was like, oh, that really sucks. And I started to feel very bad. I'm not gonna lie. I started to feel very bad about myself. And I was like, I don't have that many friends. Why can't I keep my friendships? You know, yada, 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 yada. And I just started to get so down on myself. I just remembered, like, I have a couple good friends. And one, that's all that I need. And two, it doesn't make me weird. It doesn't make me, you know, a bad person or a bad friend. I also have this thing where I often think that if I don't have a lot of friends, I must be a bad person. I must have said something that insulted someone or offended someone, and that's why they don't like me anymore. And there have been moments where I know I've said things that have not been cool to my friends, but I've always apologized. And when those friendships don't come back together after, you know, I think we've mended things, it just hurts me so much. And I struggle so much with that. And I feel so emotionally depleted when a friendship ends. You know, if you don't have a lot of friends, don't feel like you're weird or like you're not normal or something's wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. We have just been pitched this idea that we're gonna have a whole bunch of friends and it's gonna be perfect, or we're gonna have one very best friend who's gonna be there for us through everything. And if you have that, count your blessings, and I am so happy for you. And I do feel now like I have at least one very, very good friend, but it wasn't always like that for me. And you know, I would get made fun of all the time for not having a lot of friends. Hurt my feelings, but it's okay. And I realize now as an adult that it's not my fault. It's not that anything's wrong with me. We're just sold an idea that this is what friendship was going to look like for us. And for many of us, it just doesn't look like that. But it's not you. You're not weird. There's nothing wrong with you. We just have had this expectation of what friendship is and what friendship is going to look like. And when it doesn't happen, we automatically think there's something wrong with us, but there isn't. I also think you have to remember that your values and the way that you live your life can also sometimes impact the amount of friends that you have. And if anyone knows this, it is I. I understand what it is like to have the way that you live your life impact whether or not you have a bunch of friends, because you don't want to be doing the things that they want to do, and you can't find a group of people who want to do the things that you're interested in or that you want to do. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I was really into the whole like partying, going out and having wild nights kind of thing. And it was a good time. But once I sort of transitioned from that into, okay, I'm done with that. I was done with that in like 2 years. When I first was making that transition, I slowly started to feel the effects of not partaking in, you know, hookup culture, not partaking in going out culture, party culture as much. I immediately started to feel the effects of that and to feel the effects of how that was impacting the friendships that I had at that time. Because many of those friendships were built on a foundation of this is what we do together. We go out, we drink, we, you know, flirt with guys, and we live this fun early 20s lifestyle. And once I wasn't doing that anymore, I realized I didn't have a lot of people. I didn't have that many people around. When you live a life that is different than the norm or different than what everyone's doing at that time or what your group of friends is doing at that time, it's gonna be hard to maintain those relationships. But at the end of the day, like maintaining your core values and feeling authentic with yourself is so much more important. You will find and be blessed with people who are on the same path as you and who want the same things as you. You just might have to try a little bit harder to find them. I don't want to end this video on a note that is sad and just like, yeah, if you don't have friends, you don't have friends. Because the fact of the matter is that we need connection, and as women, as feminine women, we need feminine connection. Like, don't get me wrong, love Kane to death. He is amazing. He's my best friend in so many ways, but I will always need feminine connection. I will always need connection with other women where we can talk about things and we can just, you know, just talk about girl things. I will always need that. I understand that you probably want that as well and need that as well. And so there are some things that I think we can do to, you know, figure out how we can make friends as an adult, which is not easy. The first thing I think is that we just have to ask ourselves, like, am I being a good friend? Am I putting in the effort? Am I sending a text message to say, hey, just checking in, hope you're okay? Am I the one calling? Am I the one inviting my friend over for coffee or, you know, to do something? I think a lot of times it's so easy in friendships to look at the other person and say, this person's not doing enough, they're not doing enough, they're not doing X, Y, and Z thing. Sometimes it can be us. It can be us. We're not perfect. Okay, we're not perfect. It can be us. And I think we have to ask ourselves, like, am I putting in the effort it takes to maintain a friendship? And if the answer is yes, then that's good. And then you know, okay, maybe this other person doesn't want to be in a friendship with me, and then they're like friend ghosting me, or they don't know what to say or whatever. But if the answer is no, then you need to, you know, reassess that, because you cannot expect other people to do something that you're not willing to do. If you're not willing to pick up the phone and call a friend just to say hi or to invite them out for coffee or drinks or whatever, then you can't expect that person to do it for you. One of the ways that we can make friends as adults, I think, is to just put ourselves out there more. When you're in school, you don't have that problem because you kind of have built-in community at your school and everyone kind of breaks off into little groups and things like that. But when you're an adult, you don't have that. So you have to create almost a simulation of that in your adult life. So whether that's going and taking, a class of some sort, a dance class, a painting class, a pottery class, and then going to a meetup group, joining a book club, anything where you can find people who have similar interests as you in real life, in person, is going to help you find those sorts of friend communities. And also, don't hold these new relationships that you make as an adult to the same standard and expectation that you hold your friendships that you've had for a long time to. These are new friendships, they're new relationships in your life, and it might take some time, it might take some adjusting to get to a place where you feel super, super comfortable with them. It's going to feel new and different and kind of like you're dating someone new, or it can. Sometimes you meet someone and you hit it off right away, but have grace for yourself in this new friendship and this new relationship because it's new, and don't expect to feel the exact same way with this new friend that you felt with your friend that you knew for 5 to 10 years. And then another option is to become friends with your spouse's friends' spouses. So if your husband has a best friend who's also married, then you might end up becoming good friends with his wife. A lot of times you'll find your friends through your partner's relationships and some of their friendships, and you'll end up becoming good friends with your husband's friend's partner. So that's another option as well. That hasn't been my reality, but it's an option. And then finally, you can also reconnect with friends from your past, with friends who you used to be maybe a little bit closer to and nothing really happened, but you just were living in different parts of the country or whatever. You, let's say, end up both back at home or both in the same city, and you can reconnect with them. That's actually happened to me recently with one of my friends who I was on the dance team with in high school, and she went to college in Los Angeles, and then she was off to New York, and we would always kind of keep in touch, but nothing too crazy. And now that she has moved back to our area, we've been spending more time together, and it's been so nice and so refreshing to just spend time with someone who knew me when I was younger and who we have things in common with, and we have that sort of foundation of having already been friendly with each other and being friends from our past. And now we're older and we have a bit more mature of a relationship. We're both engaged, so we're both in the wedding planning process, and it's just really nice to sort of reconnect in that way. So don't write off the friendships and the relationships that you had when you were younger, because a lot of times those can come back around and you can end up forming something really beautiful at this phase of your life. I think the most important thing to remember when it comes to friendships is just that they might not look exactly the way that you think they're going to look based off of, the expectations that you hold. Sometimes a friendship doesn't look like you have one best friend and that best friend also considers you their best friend. Sometimes the person you consider your best friend has a different best friend. That is very, very possible. And sometimes you're not going to have a group of girlfriends. There might be some phases in your life where your best friend is your husband, or your boyfriend or whatever. And I know people say that that's not super healthy or whatever, but I think in a healthy relationship, you and your partner, should feel like best friends. Of course, we need that outside community and we want to have relationships with other people, but just be kind to yourself and know that, just like romantic relationships, friendships fluctuate, they go up and down. It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you might feel like you have a bunch of friends and sometimes you might feel all alone, but just know that you're not all alone, and there are ways to create community and create friendships. You just have to put in a little bit of effort, and you just have to know that friendships take just as much effort and just as much commitment as romantic relationships. They don't come easily and they don't stay easily. So if you want to foster good friendships with someone, you kind of have to treat it as seriously as you would treat a romantic relationship. All right, my loves, I am glad that we were able to have this chat today. Comment down below what your experiences with friends have been like. I know I've had some wild stories, which I told in that Patreon video, and there have just been so many moments in my life where where I have just felt like I have absolutely no friends, but I would rather have a few friends who I really love and care about, who really love and care about me, than have a bunch of people in my life who don't really love and care about me. It's okay. Comment down below what your experiences with friends have been, with your experiences, what your experiences with female friendships have been, because I know that there's a lot there. There's a lot there with female friendships. So comment that down below, leave a like on this video, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.